welcome back to World Crisis Radio. This is our first edition of the new year, coming on for the first time on January 2nd, I believe, 2010. And we invite you to go check Tarpley.net, Tarpley.net, your source for all those books I've written in English, French, Italian, Spanish, German, Japanese, and more coming. And you can also take a look at various recent media interviews. Russia Today, the Guns and Butter program on KPFA, Berkeley, San Francisco, with Bonnie Faulkner, and a series of others. So now let's just look at the terrorist escalation. Again, 12 incidents in 2009 make this the worst year, the densest year in these events, the most since 2001. The Riverdale synagogue patsies, they were going to bomb a synagogue in the Bronx, and they were also going to try to bring down airplanes at the Newburgh, New York Air National Guard, or New York State Air National Guard base. These were essentially convicts who had turned into derelicts and easily influenced by a fast-talking FBI provocateur with lots of money. They were sheep-dipped in Lashkar-e-Taibi of Pakistan, and that's the big thing. That's where the new wave is coming. In the summer, we have the Zazi case. Zazi, of course, Flushing, Queens to Denver, Colorado, going back and forth, all kinds of strange stuff. And this still very murky, but the big thing with him was he was from Afghanistan, so it gets you right into Afghanistan, Pakistan, the tribal areas, right, the Waziristan, and all the rest of it. Then in November, the big one, Major Hassan there in Fort Hood, and his connections to Al-Awlaki, the CIA lackey, used to sheep-dip Major Hassan to establish his credentials as a member of Al-Qaeda, or at least a contact of Al-Qaeda, always in quotes. We've also got the case of the 4 or 5 young Pakistanis from northern Virginia who were supposedly, they were looking for a way to be recruited when they went back to Pakistan, and they were supposedly in touch with Jaish-e-Mohammed, another one of these very shadowy groups. And then in December, we've got the Umar Farouk Mutalab case, the Detroit patsy. Now the question is, where is this going? Well, it seems to be escalating, so the sky's the limit. The sky so far has been something of the dimensions of 9/11, but who knows, right? Cheney and others certainly had something more ambitious in mind back in August, September 2007 with the rogue B-52, which has never been investigated. If you want to ask yourself who's doing these things, well, it's the rogue network, the secret government, the invisible government. It's them, the deep state. This has been around for more than 100 years, as I've said before. It goes back to the moment when Grover Cleveland capitulated completely, turned over U.S. public credit and U.S. public finance to J.P. Morgan, Wall Street, and London. And since then, the problem is Wall Street, people. It's the government is the problem to the extent that it's dominated by Wall Street. We also have other cases, though, where it has been less dominated by Wall Street and has turned out to be rather useful. Key example, the New Deal. Key possible example, the New Frontier. A lot of good things done there, too. But sure is that when Wall Street dominates the government, that is the worst of all possible worlds. Therefore, go for the Toreador, go for the Matador, not the Cape. That's Wall Street, your principal enemy. Government can be whatever it's going to be, but Wall Street will always be on the side of war, reaction, backwardness, and so forth. So where are we headed? To greater tempests, obviously, as the hysteria of the ruling elite of the Anglo-American world increases, as it's clearer that China is forging ahead in critical areas of industry, science, technology, as you see the Republic of Korea doing the same thing and all other people around the world. The temptation now is to use war to interrupt what would be normal economic development. Normal economic development would be that gas pipeline and natural gas and oil pipeline between Iran and China going through Pakistan. That's the central issue that they seem to be so concerned about. That's why we have to have the breakup of Pakistan into Baluchistan, Pashtunistan, Sindh, and Punjab, so that there can't be any infrastructural development in the area. So that is obviously very, very concerning. Now, in terms of the internal U.S. development, I'll try to get as much of this as I can. Look at Woodrow Wilson as an example of a Democratic, pedantic professor, presidential candidate, ran in 1916 saying he kept us out of war, and as soon as he got himself reelected, he turns around and declares war on Germany. A lot of people have that feeling with Obama. Now, Obama, of course, ran as a warmonger, but a lot of left liberals just couldn't hear it when he said, I'm going to attack Pakistan and kill Pakistanis on their own territory. The Woodrow Wilson side of it is this. Remember, he was put into office by the House of Morgan. Morgan did not like William Howard Taft. They found that conservative Republicans, and that's what they were. McKinley and William Howard Taft are some of your last conservatives in the Republican Party, not British philosophical radicals, not Benthamites, not John Stuart Mill, free market, this kind of stuff, not David Ricardo, but actual conservatives, American system conservatives. McKinley didn't like imperialism, didn't want the Philippines, therefore assassinated Theodore Roosevelt, the Anglophile, mentally disturbed individual takes over. Same thing with William Howard Taft, not really an enthusiastic imperialist. So therefore, the House of Morgan funded the return of Theodore Roosevelt, the Bull Moose Party of 1912, to make sure that Woodrow Wilson would win. Woodrow Wilson, puppet of Wall Street. At the end of 1916, J.P. Morgan personally went to Woodrow Wilson and said, the British and the French are about to collapse. I've lent them all my money. If they go down, even a negotiated peace won't do it. We've got to have reparations, and therefore you've got to get the U.S. into the war. Yes, sir, said Woodrow Wilson, the Confederate racist who brought Jim Crow, racial discrimination, back into the bureaucracy in Washington, D.C., where it had not existed since the Civil War. What Woodrow Wilson did in terms of repression is remarkable. The Espionage Act and the Sedition Act, and people like E.E. Cummings, an ambulance driver in France, put in jail because he said, I don't really hate Germany. He was put into a camp. Eugene Debs put into jail. A lot of very famous people, cultural people. John Dos Passos, in his trilogy, USA, focuses very much on Woodrow Wilson as the embodiment of hypocrisy and imperialism, and also as a domestic repression. Now, a lot of left liberals can't imagine a situation in which Obama is going to come after them with repression, where Eric Holder and Napolitano Totalitariano are leading the charge with this Brennan and Panetta and Dennis Blair, the intelligence czar. Is that going to be something similar to Alberto Gonzalez and Ashcroft? Yes, it can very well be. It can go beyond it. And that, I think, is the lesson. We've got to be ready for a decided deterioration in the civil liberties climate due to economic problems that are emerging, but also then to the increasing public desire to be rid of this Afghan-Pakistan adventure. It's clear they'd like to add not so much a new war, but a new theater of operations. The U.S. Is overstretched to the point where they could hardly handle another actual fighting front. But the idea is another proxy war with advisors and with predator drones and all the rest of it, and that's going to be Yemen. Yemen gets set to see Yemen bombed repeatedly. As the pressure on Obama and Napolitano increases, they're going to do a wag the dog and say, all right, fine, you want us to bomb Yemen, we'll bomb the hell out of Yemen for the middle of January sometime. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio.